with both delivering record-breaking performances. Curious, our boy asks whether any previous student has set a record before. Nade, surprised by the question, asks if he is unaware of his girlfriend's achievement. He then reveals that Amy once scored 987 points while leaving our boy utterly shocked. Meanwhile, Amy sits on the training ground. Siriel approaches her and comments on how much thinner she has become while attributing it to the intense workload of the senior class. Amy responds that Siriel will soon experience the same challenges. When Siriel asks if the advancement test is difficult, Amy explains that it is of an extremely high standard, where scoring well alone is not enough to pass. She also mentions that it feels as if all of her past actions have been graded, which Siriel finds unsettling. However, Amy reassures her that advancing in rank will make her equal to Class 4, and she already possesses the necessary skills. Siriel notices a change in Amy while finding her more confident than before. Then, she asks about our boy, which shocks Siriel while making her wonder about the nature of their relationship. As Siriel shares what Shirone has been going through, Amy realizes that Iruki is challenging him, just as he once challenged her when she was in Class 5. She recalls how Iruki pretends not to understand people's emotions, but subtly manipulates them. Siriel then questions whether he is a manhunter and asks about his connection to our boy. Concerned, she suggests helping Shirone. However, Amy dismisses the idea, telling her to stay calm while insisting that Shirone does not need anyone's help. Siriel finds her attitude toward him rude, but Amy clarifies that she only means Shirone already knows everything he needs to. Suddenly, the students notice that our dude has completed the test, achieving a score of 700 and reaching level 13. Shocked by the result, they consider it unbelievable while calling him a monster for reaching such a high score. As they confront him, asking how he managed to achieve this, he himself struggles to believe that he reached this level. Iruki, impressed by his performance, congratulates him. Meanwhile, Siriel turns to Amy, asking if our boy can win now. However, Amy dismisses it while stating that it is just a test. Frustrated, Siriel insists that she should understand the situation, given her own experience and record in the speed gun test. But Amy, uninterested, explains that she has never actively competed in this test and has ignored him. If she had actually fought against him, she believes she would have lost. Meanwhile, Iruki takes the test again and scores 701 points. Once more, there is only a 1-point difference between them. Our boy starts to wonder just how far Iruki can go while realizing that for him, this result is effortless. At that moment, he comes to the conclusion that he cannot win at all. Shirone sits in a room, deep in thought, as he reflects on the short break before the test. However, he quickly realizes that he only has 3 days left, which, in his mind, is not enough time to surpass his rival's score. Then he thinks Iruki's words that such excuses are made only by the weak. Moreover, those without skill have no right to preach about the value of life. At the same time, frustration builds within him as he believes that, without proof, no one will ever take his words seriously. As a result, he briefly questions whether he has lost touch with reality since joining the noble school. After all, in this world the weak are ignored. Therefore, he realizes that giving up is not an option. If he truly wants to win, he must find a way to exceed the number. Just then, an idea strikes him: what exactly is a number? Furthermore, he thinks of sequence and what is its true nature. Instead of forcing himself to think logically, he decides to feel it instead. As he does so, he pushes his mind to count as high as possible while stretching his limits. Then, something unexpected happens. Suddenly, he sees something strange and mutters in disbelief that whether it be the end of numbers, that shouldn't be possible after all. Numbers are supposed to be infinite. A sudden realization takes hold of him, and he starts unraveling the mystery. However, just as quickly, he snaps back to reality while feeling confused. Up until now, he had only been counting numbers and thinks whether he was hallucinating and stress is affecting him. Despite his uncertainty, he clearly remembers the intense pull he felt, something beyond explanation. Consequently, he begins to wonder whether numbers have a purpose beyond simple counting. Only later does he come to a shocking realization that his eyes had been closed for 40 hours straight. The next day, at Integrated Training Grounds 1, students gather for Class 5's speed gun test. Many feel nervous, their hands trembling. One wonders aloud why younger students have come to watch. In response, another explains that they want to make an impression while adding that they had done the same thing in the past. Soon after, Class 4 students arrive while causing even more tension. Some question their presence while feeling the added pressure. However, one reassures the others while suggesting that most people are likely there to witness the much-anticipated match between Shirone and Iruki. He confidently assumes that this is the main event everyone is waiting for. As the excitement builds, a student asks who is more likely to win. Another quickly points out that Iruki has consistently performed better so far. However, Siriel warns against making hasty judgments while explaining that the test pairs two competitors against each other, and that competitiveness plays a major role. Moreover, our boy tends to excel in actual battles while making the outcome less predictable. Eventually, time runs out and the test concludes. One student proudly declares victory, while another, despite passing, feels a strange sense of frustration. Meanwhile, Sariel admits that although she had sounded confident earlier, but she is actually nervous inside. As another test wraps up, a student expresses satisfaction while realizing that he performed better than expected. Soon after, the professor commends Group 19 for their efforts. Without delay, he announces that it is time for the final group. As Shirone and Iruki step forward, the crowd erupts while chanting their names. The atmosphere buzzes with anticipation. Amidst the excitement, a boy eagerly encourages Shirone, urging him to maintain his high spirits. The professor gives them 1 minute, reminding them that many eyes are watching. Moreover, he hopes they will fight fairly and give their best for the test. Meanwhile, Iruki turns to Shirone and allows him to begin. Without hesitation, their battle starts, and both put in all their effort to win. As the fight unfolds, students watch in shock. For instance, one exclaims that every target explodes right from the start, amazed by their skill. Similarly, another agrees while calling them both incredible. At first, their scores remain equal at 12. However, as time passes, Iruki's spirit zone gradually shrinks. At that moment, a student whispers to Sariel while mentioning that he has heard about Iruki's schism before, but never expected it to be such an impressive sight. In response, she nods in agreement while admitting that Amy was right to call him a tough opponent. While speaking, she suddenly notices a change that Shirone's score has now surpassed Iruki's. At this point, Iruki holds 119 points, whereas Shirone reaches 121. As a result, some assume that Iruki is playing around again while pretending to lose before making a comeback. One even calls him arrogant for his tactics. However, Iruki surprises them by laughing and clarifying that, this time, he has been giving it his all. Then he turns to Shirone, suspiciously asking what he did during the past 3 days. Meanwhile, the professor silently observes while realizing something important. He notes that a new path may seem long at first, but if someone has walked it before, they can move down it much faster. Furthermore, he compares it to counting while wondering just how far Shirone has pushed himself. In the end, Iruki, still stunned seeing the performance of Shirone and considers him monster. As the professor observes their performance, she recognizes modularity in action. She notes that our guy is getting more numbers as they appear in his calculations, while making it an effective strategy. Additionally, she realizes that our boy can consciously count to his limit each time. Meanwhile, our hero remains deeply focused while understanding that his concentration has been pushed to its limit from the moment he stepped up. However, he also knows that if he makes even a single mistake, the entire sequence will collapse. Therefore, he cannot afford to lose focus for even a second. A flash appears and at that moment, his score rises far beyond Iruki's. While Iruki holds 432 points, Shirone reaches 469. The crowd erupts in excitement while cheering him on and urging him to go even faster. On the other hand, Iruki struggles with the pressure while comparing the situation to psychological doping. As a result, his calculation routine interrupts. He then realizes that he has underestimated our guy while acknowledging that they are equally intense. Nevertheless, he believes his own risk-taking strategy is on a different level. In a sudden turn of events, he pushes past Shirone's score. Everyone watches in shock as Iruki's points skyrocket. However, despite the shift, our boy does not seem to slow down. Instead, the sound of Iruki's rhythm exploding fills the air. A student suddenly notices something unusual and questions whether Iruki's spirit zone has become blurry. Sariel quickly corrects him while explaining that Iruki is not losing control and he has actually formed 2 spirit zones. This revelation leaves the entire audience stunned. Even the professor expresses disbelief while questioning how a double spirit zone is even possible. Meanwhile, our guy processes what he just witnessed while realizing that Iruki has mentally divided his schism. Furthermore, she recognizes that Iruki is now performing 2 separate calculations within each spirit zone while using logarithms. The professor acknowledges that such an ability is extremely rare, even among prodigies, and finds it astonishing that Iruki has kept it hidden all this time. A flash appears and Iruki was outstanding. At this point, Iruki's score surges far ahead while reaching 845, while our boy remains at 692. As the gap widens, a student declares the battle over, certain that the winner is already clear. Another comments that Shirone performed well but simply had bad luck. As reality sinks in, Shirone starts doubting himself. He believes he has given everything he has, yet he still cannot produce even half of what Iruki achieves. His heart fills with sadness as he questions whether his best is truly enough. However, as uncertainty clouds his mind, a new thought emerges that he must not let fear consume him. Instead, he resolves to push forward, determined to transcend numbers themselves. As our guy unveils his new technique, everyone watches in shock. Meanwhile, students excitedly point out that the lights around him are growing brighter. More targets were appearing in front of him. At the same time, he pushes himself harder, determined to give his all. Meanwhile, Iruki lets out a sarcastic laugh while taunting him to go as fast as he wants. Moreover, he confidently declares that his calculating power will always come out on top. Deep down, he convinces himself that he can calculate all the numbers in the world, and that victory is his. However, as the final second drags on, frustration builds. Time suddenly feels unbearably slow. Finally, the test ends. At first, Iruki checks his score while believing it to be a strong result. Naturally, he assumes he must have won. However, before he can celebrate, he notices Shirone's reaction. At that moment, Sariel rushes to Shirone, concerned about his condition. Seeing his exhaustion, she immediately asks if he is okay. Still feeling overwhelmed, he weakly calls out to her while asking about the test results. Instead of answering immediately, she beams with excitement and, to his surprise, reveals the shocking news that he has won. Not only that, but he has also set a new record. Suddenly, cheers erupt from the crowd as students rush to congratulate him. Meanwhile, Shirone stands frozen while struggling to process the fact that he actually won. Meanwhile, Iruki approaches him while bringing up a rule violation. Specifically, he points out that area of effect magic is not allowed in the speed gun test. In response, Shirone realizes what happened and admits that he unintentionally lit up the entire room. Hearing this, Iruki sighs while calling his reaction dull. However, he quickly reassures him that firing protons does not count as area of effect magic. With a smirk, he formally acknowledges Shirone's victory. As a result, the crowd gasps at his words, unable to believe what they just heard. One student even jokes that the sun must have risen in the west that day. Afterward, our boy takes the opportunity to address a lingering debate. He asks if Iruki now accepts his belief that human lives are more important than research. After a brief pause, Iruki reluctantly agrees. Consequently, this unexpected admission leaves Shirone completely stunned. However, Iruki quickly adds that our guy has misunderstood something. Specifically, he explains that an explosion by itself is not inherently violent. Instead, it is simply a massive release of energy. Furthermore, he clarifies that for an explosion to be truly violent, it must be set off with harmful intent. In response, our boy argues that people are the ones who manipulate energy, and that fact does not change how dangerous it can be. Iruki nods but asserts that this is exactly why responsible individuals must be in charge of handling such power. Then, with a serious expression, he declares that, from now on, Shirone must take responsibility for him as well. Iruki explains that if someone could control the energy, a single blast could sustain 10,000 people. He believes it would mark a new era without conflicts over resources, though he personally does not care much. Our boy questions why he did not explain it that way earlier, saying it would have prevented misunderstandings. Iruki admits he was testing Shirone's reaction while wanting to see whether he would exploit power or respect its dangers. Understanding Iruki's intention, our guy realizes that his opponent fears his own strength. Iruki acknowledges Shirone's victory as proof of his strong resolve and declares that only Shirone can stop him. He warns that if Shirone does not accept this responsibility, he will not back down. Determined, our boy vows not to leave until he fulfills this duty. The surrounding students react with shock while wondering if Iruki has been holding back out of fear. One of them expresses confusion about whether Iruki is a realist or a dreamer, but recognizes that his fear is genuine. Finally, our hero reassures Iruki by taking his hand and promising to stop him when the time comes. A boy then embraces them both while declaring how proud he is to be their friend. Soon after, a professor calls for Shirone and leads him away. She questions whether he understands what he has done and if he truly intended to leave them. When he hesitates, she warns that stepping into that realm means losing oneself completely. Surprised, he apologizes, unaware of the danger. She explains that the place he entered exists beyond numbers, known as the Immortal Section by mages and Nirvana by monks. She cautions that although a human can reach infinity, anyone who ventures too far ceases to exist. Later, our boy reflects on his recurring nightmare, where he sees a vast void pulling him in. As he wakes, he realizes it is the same dream he has every night since stepping into that realm. He also notices a strange sensation affecting other students. When he accidentally spills a glass of water, he decides to seek answers from Professor Romy. However, she assures him that there is nothing wrong with his body. Shirone wonders aloud what is happening to him, while admitting that he feels as if a ghost has taken control on his body. While sharing his concerns with his friends, Nade laughs while saying Shirone's serious expression made him nervous for a moment. However, our boy insists he is not joking, and reminds them that they are part of the Paranormal Science Club. Iruki comments that it is unusual to hear such concerns from someone as brilliant as Shirone, who even managed to defeat him. Nade questions why Iruki is reacting so seriously as well. Our guy then chuckles while considering whether it was foolish to bring up the topic. But Iruki brings up Shirone's dream while recalling that he described being in complete darkness. surrounded by stars that were being pulled somewhere. And at the end, he saw a pulsing string of light. Nade confirms that the light resembled a heartbeat. Iruki then states that the vast scale, speed and nature of the place Shirone described are impossible to observe on Earth. However, if the dream represents something real, he explains that such a phenomenon could only exist in outer space. Shocked, our boy compares it to what they have read in books and questions how he could dream of a place he has never seen. Nade reassures him that it is possible while claiming he has heard of similar cases before. When Iruki asks for clarification, Nade recounts an experiment from 200 years ago. He explains that scientists performed a spiritual electrolysis test on a criminal sentenced to death, while believing that if the soul had a physical form, electricity could break it apart. The man was placed inside a metal box that acted as a conductor, and a continuous electrical current was applied. However, since the experiment was highly unethical, it was shut down quickly. Surprisingly, the man survived and regained consciousness after a month. When he awoke, he spoke of distant countries he had never visited or even heard of. These places existed beyond their land, yet he described them with remarkable accuracy. Nade emphasizes that everything he said was later confirmed to be true. He then explains a possible theory, while suggesting that if the man's soul had truly been broken down and ionized, it could have turned into an electromagnetic force capable of attracting global information. The odd tingling sensation he experienced during the process was referred to as super sight. Our boy reacts with shock while realizing that the tingling sensation Nade described is exactly what he has been feeling. Iruki then questions how Shirone could have seen outer space, while suggesting that if the soul is electrically ionized, it might cause a quantum phenomenon that allows it to transcend time and space. However, our guy struggles to understand his explanation. Iruki clarifies while stating that this occurs at a level smaller than electrons, where events happen beyond human comprehension. He describes it as a world that cannot be measured or observed simultaneously, while existing only through probabilities. He then proposes that if the soul is lighter than an electron, the usual connection between time and space collapses while making it possible to perceive the universe itself. Nade excitedly points out that the theory fits Shirone's situation perfectly. Amazed, Shirone admits that they have explained his experiences in a way that makes sense. He praises their knowledge while joking that they truly are a science club despite not looking like it. Nade proudly agrees, while Iruki reminds them that this is still just a hypothesis. To understand more, he insists that Shirone should be honest with them. He then brings up the unusual results of Shirone's proton firing during the speed gun test, and connects it to when the nightmares began. Curious, he asks what really happened. Our guy hesitates before revealing what Professor Romy told him. Before he can finish, Nade interrupts with a shocked reaction to the mention of the immortal section, and immediately asks if Iruki has heard of it. Laughing, Iruki recalls learning about the immortal function from his father, while describing it as the ultimate mystery in mathematics. He believes this function holds the key to understanding everything. Our dude then mentions the professor's warning about its dangers. Iruki agrees while explaining that in a way, infinity and nothingness are fundamentally the same. He suddenly realizes how Shirone managed to defeat him, and laughs at the irony of the situation. Surprisingly, while hearing the others discuss it casually makes Shirone feel more at ease. Determined, Shirone announces his decision to join the Paranormal Science Club. Nade cheers excitedly, while our boy explains that he no longer wants to live in fear. Instead, he wants to study the phenomenon and face it head-on, while believing that together, they can uncover something important. Nade enthusiastically declares that they are coming for the immortal function, while celebrating the fact that their club finally has enough members to regain official status and school funding. Iruki, however, questions whether the professors will approve Shirone's membership, while reminding them that their club has the worst reputation in the school. Confidently, Nade assures them that he will take care of it while revealing an application form he plans to submit secretly. The other two express concern, but he dismisses their worries and suggests celebrating at the cafeteria. Shirone offers to pay, despite Iruki reminding him that he is broke. Laughing, our boy insists that since it is now his club, it is only fair. However, he also points out that they should clean up their club room first. Unfortunately, despite Nade's efforts to be discreet, the application is discovered by the professor he least wanted to find it. She is shocked when she sees our boy's name on the form. Professor Oliver asks Professor Thad what he is doing, and he replies that he is carrying the new admissions for the club since there are many before the vacations. He explains that every year, the club is formed, and once the students perform well, it is dissolved. As he speaks, he accidentally drops one of the slips on the floor. Oliver quickly picks it up and is shocked to see that it does not belong to this club. She is even more surprised when she notices the name of their student on the application. Holding it in her hand, she immediately goes to meet Professor Romy. Arriving at Romy's place, she apologizes for interrupting her training, but Romy assures her that she must have come for an important reason. They both take a sip of tea as Oliver reveals that Shirone has joined the club. Romy is surprised by the news. Oliver reminds her that it is the Paranormal Science Club, notorious for a major incident when they were students at this school. Parents often complained about it, and she wonders why Shirone, being one of the most talented students, would choose this club instead of focusing on his studies. Professor Romy, however, explains that the club has changed significantly under the presidency of Nade. He is a responsible person with a good group of students who do not cause any trouble. She further mentions that Gold Machia, the head of the Mage Association of Tormia, was also a member of this club. Confident in its new direction, she believes that Shirone will benefit from joining. Meanwhile, on the other side, Nade is lying down and calls our boy. Our guy asks if they are not going to attend class, but Nade, feeling unwell, admits that he usually skips. Nearby, Iruki plays chess, eager for another round. As Shirone looks around, he notices the state of the room, which he had cleaned earlier, now messy again. Realizing that both Nade and Iruki neither attend class nor conduct any research in the club, he decides to focus on studying on his own. Shirone starts reading books while nearby Iruki asks Nade if he has completed his invention. Nade responds that it is not finished yet. Curious, Iruki guesses that he is working on an invisibility cloak. When Nade finally shows him the invention, he is highly impressed. Noticing this, our boy also wants to see it. Nade explains that it only works for an hour while prompting our guy to come over and examine it as well. Meanwhile, Professor Oliver and Professor Romy continue their conversation. Professor Oliver clarifies that she is not concerned about Nade but rather about Iruki, who, despite pretending to remain in Class 5, is far more capable than he lets on. She points out that Shirone has already surpassed him in the speed gun test. Aware that once the senior students graduate, the school will finally be rid of certain troublesome individuals, she worries that if Shirone starts interacting too much with Iruki, he might adopt his habits, which could be harmful to the school. Professor Romy, surprised by Oliver's concerns, believes she is overthinking the situation. On the other side, our boy notices that Nade has completed several magic grenades. Observing them closely, he wonders if they are dangerous. Nade reveals that he has been saving them for a long time, but Iruki dismisses this while claiming he is lying and only wants to become a magic engineer, which is why he struggles academically. Our guy, surprised by his ambition, finds it incredible and asks if he has designed them using electromagnetic energy. Our boy notices a red book lying in front of him. Moving towards it, he picks it up and asks if it belongs to the Human Form Club. Hearing this, he is taken aback. As he opens the book, he sees that it contains records of students who were part of the club. Nade explains that it holds a complete history of students who have passed through various shady clubs, while detailing all the gossip and illustrations related to them. Surprised, our guy wonders why the school does nothing about this. Shocked by what he hears, he continues flipping through the pages until he suddenly notices Amy Carmus in the book. As he stares at her name, Nade reassures him that there is nothing about him in it and teasingly asks if he has been dating Amy. Ignoring the remark, our boy instead questions who created the book. Iruki responds that it remains a mystery, as no one knows its author. However, since it contains detailed information about senior students, it is most likely compiled by one of them. Hearing this, Shirone is even more surprised while realizing that a senior might be behind the creation of such a book. On the other hand, Professor Oliver realizes that the Paranormal Science Club lacks morals while resembling the Dark Magician kids. She believes that if talented students join, their abilities will be misused, which could harm both the school and its monitoring system. She explains to Professor Romy that the club was never officially dissolved because it was never granted official club status. However, with gifted students now attempting to revive it, she feels the need to disband it once and for all. Professor Romy, while understanding her concerns, listens intently. Pouring some tea, Professor Romy reminds her that there is a reason why the school does not interfere with student clubs. These clubs are independent while playing a crucial role in cultivating students while allowing them to reap the benefits of their own efforts. She argues that if the administration takes away students' ability to choose, they will grow up fearing decision-making in all aspects of life. Considering this perspective, she suggests giving students the freedom to choose. Oliver, though initially hesitant, begins to see the logic in her argument. However, she remains determined to guide students toward developing their talents while keeping them away from distractions. Professor Romy realizes that Professor Oliver values our boy not as a club member but as a student with great potential. She also recognizes that Professor Oliver has given him ample time to decide his future, yet her dedication to shaping his path remains unwavering. Changing the tone, Professor Romy finally shares something she had not mentioned before, that during the speed gun test, Shirone reached nirvana. Professor Oliver, shocked by the revelation, shouts in disbelief. Suddenly the floor trembles and the building shakes. Meanwhile, Shirone, while sensing the vibrations, wonders if it is an earthquake. Nade quickly instructs everyone to hide everything while prompting Shirone to question why. Nate explains that a professor is about to inspect the warehouse while urging him to remain silent. It turns out to be a surprise inspection by Oliver. As she walks toward their room, she notes that it takes 3 minutes to reach it, and is more than enough time to eliminate any incriminating evidence. Shirone, still confused, suggests they should go and welcome the professor, but the others immediately silence him while warning that if he acts suspiciously, he could be suspended from the club. Resolving to remain composed, they sit quietly while pretending nothing has happened. When Professor Oliver finally enters the room, she finds them sitting calmly on the sofas. Observing their behavior, she becomes even more convinced that the club must be dissolved immediately. As she enters the room, she asks whether they will not greet her and thinks that these clubs are autonomous organizations run by students under the Teachers' Council. She also believes it is necessary to give any opinion through a complete process, even though she is a professor. However, Nade interrupts while stating that they are discussing something important. She finds his attitude very irritating. He remarks that if she had informed them of her visit beforehand, they would have welcomed her properly. She realizes they are pressuring our boy to be a part of their game. Meanwhile, the boy feels happy inside upon seeing Professor Oliver and wonders whether he should sit or say anything. The professor then inquires whether they offer tea to their guests, to which Nade responds with skepticism while questioning if she would trust them if they made tea for her. Choosing to get straight to the point, she tells them to come to the club room at school. They are shocked upon hearing this. Nade asks for the reason, and she explains that after reviewing the documentation, she has found many reasons to disband the club. It has not produced anything beneficial for more than 4 years, has continued operating without enough members, and has not received funding for a long time. According to regulations, the club can only continue if it produces something significant within a month. Hearing this, Nade lays in front of her while pleading not to make them do a presentation, as it is impossible to prove anything about paranormal science. He then questions whether she truly intends to dissolve the club, which stands against the Society of Magic, an organization filled with science and logic. Declaring that he would rather do anything than the presentation, he waits for an alternative. She, seeing his willingness to listen, presents another option, which is removing Shirone from their club. Our boy is shocked upon hearing this and immediately asks for the reason. Professor Oliver responds while implying that he already knows why she is saying this. She further mentions that the immortal function is a significant problem in the school, while posing a dangerous threat to young students and potentially harming him as well. He insists that while he understands the risks, he will not do anything wrong. However, she clarifies that the real issue lies in the phenomenon of overflow. Though he struggles to comprehend its implications, Iruki steps in while explaining that it is similar to a genius disease, something he himself experienced at the age of 8. Recalling his own experience, he shares that his father had simply told him to endure it. They appear to take the matter lightly. The professor then elaborates while describing overflow as a phenomenon where the human mind is unable to handle vast abilities, while causing the brain's barriers to break under the pressure of excessive information. This results in a severe risk of mental breakdown, commonly known as the genius disease. She warns that those who fail to receive proper treatment for this condition suffer immense pain for the rest of their lives. What concerns her even more is the overflow triggered by the immortal function, which is far more dangerous. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he becomes nervous. The thought that it could drive him to madness begins to settle in, and he recalls the nightmares he's been experiencing while making him connect the dots. Understanding the risks, she had previously advised him to reduce his class load while undergoing psychological treatment. Now, she decides to handle the matter personally. If they truly care about him, they should remove him from the club. Nade, however, refuses to agree. She tells him not to act childishly, but he insists that the decision should be his own. Iruki shares a similar perspective while believing that she is pressuring him unnecessarily. Nade then makes a bold remark, while suggesting that her concern for him indicates she has feelings for him. To their surprise, she acknowledges this and questions whether they have a problem with it. They, in turn, are left bewildered while wondering how it could be possible for a teacher to have such feelings for a student. She explains that it is statistically possible, but Nade dismisses the idea while refusing to bring statistics into the discussion. He then questions whether, according to statistics, there is a probability that she also likes him. Without hesitation, she states that the chances are absolutely zero.